Hello and welcome back to my channel, your one-stop shop for all things intriguing and enlightening. I'm your host, ready to guide you through another adventure into the unknown. Today, we're diving into the world of military knowledge, exploring the might, the power, and the sheer ingenuity that shapes one of the most formidable forces on the planet, the U.S. Armed Forces. So buckle up, sit back, and prepare for a journey that's bound to leave you a little wiser and a lot more fascinated. Let's get started. Let's talk about the U.S. military, or as it's officially known, the U.S. Armed Forces. It's a powerful and unified fighting force, bringing together the Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, Coast Guard, and even the Space Force. Now, what's really interesting is that it's not just military folks calling the shots. The U.S. has a strong tradition of civilians being in control. You've got the president at the very top, and then the Department of Defense, led by the Secretary of Defense, who, by the way, is a civilian. They're the ones making the big decisions and implementing policies. All 5 military branches fall under their jurisdiction, except for the Coast Guard, which moved under the Department of Homeland Security after 9/11. But hey, they can be transferred back to the Navy in times of war, if President or Congress says so. The U.S. military is no small operation either. We're talking about 1.4 million active duty soldiers and over 800,000 reservists. And the majority of these brave folks are volunteers. Not to mention, the U.S. spends nearly $692 billion a year on these forces. That's more than any other country in the world. This massive budget allows the U.S. military to be equipped with some seriously advanced gear, which gives them a pretty big edge on both defense and offense. And if that doesn't impress you, get this. The U.S. military has got some pretty unique features, like the USS Gerald Ford, CVN-78, the world's only aircraft carrier boasting over 100,000 tons of nuclear-powered displacement. This monster of a ship, the biggest in the U.S. Navy, stretches 333 meters long, 77 meters wide, and has a waterline beam of 40 meters. It's even got a flight control tower that's as tall as a 25-story building and is powered by 2 A-1B nuclear reactors. These reactors use zirconium and uranium as fuel, enriched to an impressive 93.5%, which gives it greater power output and simplifies maintenance. The steam generated by these reactors powers everything on the ship, including the electromagnetic aircraft launch system. Fascinating, isn't it? Although it's huge, the Gerald Ford isn't slow by any means. Picture this, an island-sized behemoth charging through the ocean at an impressive 56 kilometers per h, and it doesn't even need to stop. It can carry an astounding 90 military aircraft of all shapes and sizes, and it comes loaded with anti-aircraft and anti-missile defense systems. Imagine everything from RIM 162 anti-aircraft missile launchers to old-school M2 12.7 mm machine guns. This U.S. Navy superstar cost a cool $13 billion to design and test. But what makes the Gerald Ford really stand out? It's all about the tech. It uses an advanced electromagnetic aircraft launch system, or EMALS, which swaps the old steam catapult systems for electrical energy, making aircraft launches smoother. Plus, it has integrated radar systems that can detect and track threats. The arresting gear for aircraft? Also electromagnetic. The turboelectric engine makes landings feel like a dream and is on the aircraft, and it doesn't stop there. The Gerald Ford even has its own hospital, complete with labs, a pharmacy, a special care unit, and an emergency room. Over 40 medical personnel are always on hand to provide care. Expected to serve for 50 years, the Gerald Ford and carriers like it are designed to adapt to future upgrades and changes. The U.S. military is confident that these carriers are ready for whatever the future brings, thanks to their flexible, modular design. And to answer your burning question, it can house a whopping 4,600 personnel. All right, let's dive right into the good stuff. Did you know that the U.S. military isn't just known for its gigantic aircraft carrier? It's also famous for having the most number of past presidents who've worn military uniforms. Yep, you heard it right. About 31 out of over 40 U.S. presidents have served in the military. And get this, it's not compulsory for a president to have served. How cool is that? You probably know George Washington, right? This guy was the first boss of the U.S. military before he even became a president. And let's not forget Theodore Roosevelt. This 26th president received the Medal of Honor for his bravery in the Battle of San Juan Hill in 1898. And then there's George H.W. Bush, the 41st president who bagged the Distinguished Flying Cross for his killer piloting skills in World War II. Post-World War II, it was almost like you had to have served in the military to be a politician or a U.S. president. A prime example is President Dwight Eisenhower. This man was not just a president, but also the supreme Allied commander in Europe during the most intense battle our world has ever seen. He was the mastermind behind the D-Day invasion over 75 years ago, a game changer in the war. And he was the guy who put an end to the Korean War, 1950 to 1953, shortly after he stepped into office. But hey, not every president has been a military man. Some even opposed military actions. President Trump, for instance, was never a fan of Vietnam War, even though he was eligible for draft and combat service. He wasn't shy about voicing his thoughts against it. I will be honest with you, I've never been a fan of that war. I think it's a terrible war, and it's very far away, he once said. Now let's answer this burning question. Given its gigantic size and high-tech equipment, how many crew members can this beast carry? Ready for it? The answer is a whopping 4,600 personnel. So, there are three big names, right? We've got Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, and one more who have all been presidents but haven't served a day in the military. You'd think these guys might have weakened the military, right? Quite the contrary. They've actually helped to boost not just the military's physical strength, but also the brain power behind it. Here's a fun fact for you. If you decide to join the military in any role, guess what? Already have an in-house expert ready to back you up. The Pentagon revealed back in 2015 that the U.S. military has a staggering 264,890 specialists across various fields. We're talking engineers, PhD holders, you name it, forming over a quarter of the total military force. The main job of these brainiacs? Keeping our weaponry and equipment in tip-top shape. Thanks to this team, the U.S. military is a worldwide leader in equipment maintenance. But let's not get confused. These specialist roles are not the same as officers or non-commissioned officers. The quality of these roles has been consistently high, guaranteeing that our military stays strong, disciplined, and well-oiled over the years. Here's another interesting tidbit. We're one of the few armed forces in the world that's actually older than the country it serves. Since day one, the military has been a key player in our country's history. It's fair to say that the victories in the Barbary Wars and the War of 1812 really helped shape and unify our nation. You might find it strange, though, that our founding fathers were actually a bit skeptical about having a standing military force. They had this fear that some ambitious dictator might use the military to seize control of the country. It wasn't until World War II that we officially established a large, modern military force. Here's a cool fact to wrap things up. Although the United States declared independence on July 4th, 1776, our military was actually established a year earlier in 1775, according to some historical sources. Before we had a formal military, local Native Americans had their own militias, but there was no organized command structure. These militias wanted to resist the British in Boston in the spring of 1775, but they soon realized they needed a unified command to effectively defeat the enemy. So, on June 14, 1775, the Continental Congress passed a resolution to establish the Continental Army, marking the very birth of our military. And the next day, they appointed none other than George Washington as the new commander-in-chief of the Revolutionary Army. Did you know that the U.S. military has evolved and grown significantly over the years? It now oversees about 158 bases globally, excluding locations that are kept hush-hush. It's interesting to note that domestic defense facilities alone spread across a whopping 62,159 square kilometers. To give you an idea, that's 86 times the size of Singapore. What's more, not only do these facilities allow the military to conduct operations smoothly, but isolated bases also provide a cover for classified tests, steering clear of foreign intelligence. Area 51, anyone? Now let's talk about their equipment. They've got projects like super aircraft carriers that cost over a staggering $13 billion annually. Not just that, they also have a massive budget for the development and production of various weapons. They're the leaders of the pack, boasting unique and expensive weaponry that other nations can only dream about. One such marvel is the B-2 Spirit stealth bomber. This aircraft is one of a kind not only because of its sophisticated defense systems, but also its sky-high production cost, which is over a monumental $1 billion USD, and that's excluding onboard equipment. To put it into perspective, that's the same amount they spent building the Ticonderoga-class guided missile cruiser. However, keeping a B-2 Spirit bomber is no cheap task. Its top-quality stealth coating requires specialized storage conditions, or else it starts to degrade. Moving on, let's talk about some nukes. The U.S. recently modernized their B-61 bomb model from 1963, resulting in the B-6112 bomb. The total cost of the program exceeded $11 billion USD, so each new B-6112 bomb costs a cool $23 million USD. But it's not just about the price tag, guys. the B-6112 has become significantly more accurate and can even destroy underground command centers. And it's not just about the machines. People are at the heart of the U.S. military. They house one of the finest military officer training institutions in the world. In fact, the U.S. Military Academy, also known as West Point, is considered more prestigious than Harvard or Stanford. Situated near New York City, this historic academy was established way back in 1802 by President Thomas Jefferson. Each year, it opens its doors to about 1,100 cadets, each of whom represents the diverse fabric of America. With an acceptance rate of just 9%, it's no wonder they say that graduating from West Point guarantees job security. So there you have it, a quick dive into the impressive world of the U.S. military. So where do U.S. presidents like Grant and Eisenhower and famous generals such as Patton and MacArthur receive their training? You guessed it, right here. This is the same spot where countless global leaders have honed their skills. The Academy's main goal? To churn out top-notch graduates who excel in intellect, physical fitness, military knowledge, and ethics. A small piece of trivia for you. Each year, they admit around 1,100 students, both boys and girls, from every corner of the U.S. talk about diversity. And guess what? The acceptance rate is a mere 9%. So, for every 100 hopefuls, only 9 get the golden ticket, with a male-to-female ratio of 83-17. Sadly, about 10% of cadets have to leave West Point each year, leaving fewer than 1,000 to graduate. But don't you worry, even those who leave are highly respected and often snag invitations to Ivy League colleges like Harvard or MIT. To give you an idea of how tough it is to get in, you need to secure a nomination from at least one senator or a representative and one from a congressional delegate. Currently, each member of Congress and the vice president can recommend up to 5 candidates at a time. Aspiring cadets must be between the ages of 17 and 23, unmarried, without dependents, and of good moral character. Apart from good grades and SAT scores, you need to pass rigorous health exams, show a spirit of service, prove your leadership skills, do well in interviews, and submit compelling essays. And that's not all. They accept about 20 foreign candidates each year, but their respective countries must foot the bill. With 42 majors and research fields, West Point makes sure its students gain a wealth of knowledge and develop their military and leadership skills. The goal? To train of character. Think of it as a melting pot where you develop into a role model with the physical fitness of an Olympic athlete, the intellect of a scholar, the eloquence of an orator, and the emotional intelligence of a psychological expert. Upon graduation, cadets receive a Bachelor of Science degree and are usually commissioned as second lieutenants in the U.S. Army, with some foreign cadets serving their home countries. But the crowning glory is the symbolic West Point ring, a source of immense pride for every graduate. Despite the high caliber of graduates, the U.S. military is currently tackling a significant challenge, a personnel shortage. Since 2016, this issue has been a cause for concern. Ashton Carter, the then Secretary of Defense, called for a review of recruitment standards, suggesting that rules around weight, fitness, tattoos, and even prior marijuana use might need to be relaxed. Fast forward to today, the U.S. military is still grappling with this recruitment challenge. Regardless, the U.S. military remains the most potent force globally in terms of equipment and combat capabilities. So which part of this journey impressed you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And to answer the question from the start of the video, the USS Gerald Ford super aircraft carrier can carry a staggering 4,600 crew members.